This is your host, Danny, and this is Word Power from English Plus Podcast. Welcome to a new Word Power episode from English Plus Podcast. Today we're going to talk about current trends and we're going to learn 10 new words. These words are tendency, dominate, automation, insignificant, preponderance, retail, expansion, flexible, tolerate, and temporary. Of course, we're going to learn the 10 words in the context of our story for today, which is current trends. We're going to talk about current trends and how things are disappearing and things that have to do with work. But before we do that, let me remind you that if you would like, and you should like, to be honest, to practice the words that you're learning today and also practice the words that we learned last time in Word Power when we talked about the Headless Horseman of Sleepy Hollow. If you would like to practice the words, you can check the description of the episode. You will find a link that will take you to the custom post I created for this episode where you can practice the words to your heart's content. I created some interactive activities and a PDF downloadable worksheet that you can use to practice all the words, all the 20 words. As I told you, 10 words from today and 10 words from last week's episode. And also there's another link. I cannot stress enough the importance of supporting English Plus, supporting me to continue producing English Plus. I'm going to be honest with you. If the situation stays like this, I may not be able to continue beyond 2021. I've used all my resources and they may be enough till the end of the year, but if I don't have enough supporters by the end of the year, I may have to stop English Plus. And, start something new, try something new. But anyway, I hope that you will be generous enough to support me to continue English Plus, because that is the podcast you love, right? And that is the podcast that is not benefiting you only, it's benefiting everybody around the world. And I will take this opportunity to thank the 6 patrons that I have so far. I have 6 patrons and they've been great. I would like to say that without these 6 people, I wouldn't have even continued till this very day. They've been helping me and I do appreciate every single dollar they contributed to keep English Plus alive. A big thanks to Deepak, who was the first patron of English Plus and who supported me all the way. I cannot thank you enough. And I know there's no time to thank everybody enough, but I'm going to mention the names of these 6 great people that have been supporting me so far on Patreon. There is Deepak, of course. There's Susan, Elena, Sammy, Adnan, and Rui. I would like to thank you very much because you have no idea how greatly appreciated your support is, and I promise I'll do my best to meet your expectations and not to let you down. But for other people who are listening to me, just join this group of great people and support me, support English Plus, because resources are really low and I'm not sure English Plus can survive beyond 2021. So by the end of this year, if I don't have at least 50 supporters, I don't think I can continue English Plus. If you can contribute, that'll be perfect. You can take the link in the description and go to my Patreon page and support me right there. And if you can't, I understand. I definitely welcome you to this podcast because listening to the podcast is another way to support. But you can share this with other people. You can tell other people about English Plus and help me get to people who can support this show. I know I'm asking a lot, but I'm counting on the love of listeners and I'm counting on the quality that I'm giving. And I don't want to sound like a beggar here, but you know what I mean. I'm not going to talk more about it. Your support is the only way English Plus can continue. So please do your best to help me in any way you can. And now that being said, let's jump right in today's episode and the word power I chose for you for today, current trends, and we will talk about these 10 words in context. But first, let's talk about current trends. Too often, young people prepare themselves for jobs that are rapidly disappearing. This tendency is not hard to understand. When people think about good jobs, they think about ones they have heard or read about. They may even have had some experience with them. In other words, they think about jobs that already exist. However, the workplace keeps changing because the world keeps changing. Jobs in some fields are increasing while those in other fields are disappearing. In the early part of this century, manufacturing jobs dominated the help-wanted ads in newspapers. Factories hired huge numbers of people and paid them good money to build everything from automobiles to paper clips. However, by the 1960s, machines were doing the work men and women used to do. Automation greatly reduced the number of manufacturing jobs. Moreover, businesses with factories requiring a large labor pool have moved to countries where labor is cheap. The number of manufacturing jobs available today is insignificant compared to those in other fields. According to government figures, the preponderance of jobs in the next few decades will be in service-related fields such as health and business. Jobs will also be plentiful in the technical fields and in retail establishments such as stores and restaurants. The expansion in these fields is due to several factors: an aging population, numerous technical breakthroughs, and our changing lifestyles. The highest paying jobs will go to people with degrees in science, computers, engineering, and healthcare. What will employers of the future look for? Employers will want workers who are flexible and therefore able to change as business changes. The workers of the future will need to tolerate these changes. Many people will be expected to perform temporary jobs, then move on to new and different tasks. Each new task may involve new skills and understandings. The only thing that will remain the same is change. So that was our topic for today, and it is something to think about. It's kind of food for thought because that is the way it is, especially for people who are studying to be something. Remember, the job you want to get today may not be there tomorrow, so be ready to be flexible and to be willing to change as the market and businesses change. And now, let's move on to the part that you love and I love, and that's talking about the 10 words that I have in store for you today. These 10 words, again, are tendency, dominate, automation, insignificant, preponderance, expansion, retail, flexible, tolerate, and temporary. That's coming next. So let's start with the very first word, tendency. T-E-N-D-E-N-C-Y. Tendency. Let's take a look at how we use this word in context. We said, too often, young people prepare themselves for jobs that are rapidly disappearing. But this tendency is not hard to understand. So what do we mean by tendency? Well, a tendency is a typical or repeated habit, action, or belief. So this thing is a repeated pattern, is a repeated action. This tendency, when we said young people prepare themselves for jobs that are rapidly disappearing, this is the tendency. So this tendency, this is the typical or repeated habit, action, or belief. Now for the next word, dominate. D-O-M-I-N-A-T-E. Let's see how we use that in context. In the early part of this century, manufacturing jobs dominated the help-wanted ads in newspapers. There were plenty of jobs in the manufacturing industry. So what do we mean by dominate? We said manufacturing jobs dominated the help-wanted ads in newspapers. To dominate a situation means to be the most powerful or important person or thing in it. Obviously, in our example, is a thing, but we can use it also for people as well. So that is the meaning of dominate. Manufacturing jobs dominated. They were the most important back at that time. Now, not anymore. Machines took over. But anyway, that's our word, dominate. Now for the next word, automation. A-U-T-O-M-A-T-I-O-N. Automation. Let's see how we use that in context. However, by the 1960s, machines were doing the work men and women used to do. Automation greatly reduced the number of manufacturing jobs. So, what is the meaning of automation? Automation is the use of methods for controlling industrial processes automatically, especially by electronically controlled systems, often reducing manpower. Well, that's the whole point, and that is related to what we're talking about. We're using machines instead of human beings. That is automation. Well, of course, we're not against progress. Progress is good, but it has to be balanced. When we invent a new machine, we have to invent new jobs as well. We cannot just lay off all these people and just send them back home. Well, after all, if we can invent a system that machines only work and people are not needed anymore, and if people don't work and they don't get any money, so who's going to buy our products? We have to think about that. Progress needs to happen in a balanced way. You need to keep your customers, and if your customers don't have money anymore, how are you going to sell those products? So that's something to think about as well. But anyway, we're not going to talk about economy and politics here. It's about the word automation. Now let's talk about the next word, insignificant. That's coming next. So insignificant. 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 Let's see how we use that in context. We said the number of manufacturing jobs available today is insignificant compared to those in other fields. And that is true. But what does it mean, insignificant? Something that is insignificant is unimportant, especially because it's very small. That's the exact thing. It's very small compared to those in other fields. So it's not that important if you compare it to other fields. It's unimportant, minor, and that is our word, insignificant. Now for the next word, preponderance. 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 Let's see how we use that in context. According to government figures, the preponderance of jobs in the next few decades will be in service-related fields such as health and business. So, what does that mean? If there is a preponderance of one type of person or thing in a group, there is more of that type than any other. That is like talking about the majority, predominance or dominance, the prevalence. So we're talking about the most of this thing, but this is a fancier word to talk about it. It is a formal word, of course, but to be honest, you will need to learn some of these fancy words because sometimes you might want to use them in formal contexts, and that will reflect a very good image of your language. But of course, don't use this word in everyday conversation because that will sound weird. Nobody uses preponderance in everyday language unless you want to sound smart, and that is not something I would recommend. But in writing or informal correspondence, let's say, in an informal email or something, that's perfectly fine, and that is good actually to use. So preponderance, as I said, it's like majority, predominance or dominance. That is the meaning of preponderance. And now let's go to the next word, retail. We said in our topic, jobs will also be plentiful in the technical fields and in retail establishments such as stores and restaurants. Well, retail is the opposite of wholesale. But what is the meaning of retail? Retail is the activity of selling goods direct to the public, usually in small quantities. The opposite is wholesale. When you sell large quantities but not directly to people, you sell it to other establishments or other businesses that will sell them to the public directly. Or maybe not, maybe even not that. Maybe they will sell it to other businesses, so it is a long chain. But retail is the place where you get to sell directly to the public. Just like everything else, like the supermarket, like clothing store, department store, all of these, you can just go and buy one piece of whatever you want. That is retail. It's the opposite of wholesale. And now for our next word, expansion. Let's see how we use that in context. The expansion in these fields is due to several factors: an aging population, numerous technical breakthroughs, and our changing lifestyles. What is the meaning of expansion then? Expansion is the process of becoming greater in size, number, or amount. Now, we're talking about this trend because remember, we're talking about current trends. And this trend, the expansion in these fields, the services, the retail, is due to these factors: the aging population, numerous technical breakthroughs, and our changing lifestyle. But our focus is on the word expansion. Again, it means the process of becoming greater in size, number, or amount, like increase or development, growth, something like that. And now coming next, we have the last three words we're going to talk about: flexible, tolerate, and temporary. That's coming next. So let's start with flexible, F-L-E-X-I-B-L-E. Let's see how we use that in context. We said employers will want workers who are flexible and therefore able to change as business changes. So what does that mean? Something or someone that is flexible is able to change easily and adapt to different conditions and circumstances as they occur. To be adaptable, to be open to change, willing to change. Adjustable if it is a thing, of course. Adaptable, we'll use that more for people, but flexible, we can use it for both. So, to be flexible is to be willing to change. You can adapt to different conditions, circumstances as they occur. You don't just whine about changes and you say that I'm used to doing this thing this way and I don't want to change. No, you need to be flexible. And employers will want workers who are flexible because business changes and you need to change with it. That is the most important skill that you should have if you want to work in the 21st century and beyond, of course. And now for our next word, tolerate, Tolerate. Let's see how we use that in context. We said the workers of the future will need to tolerate these changes. So we're continuing the same idea. You need to be flexible. You need to tolerate the changes that happen to businesses. If you tolerate a situation or person, you accept them, although you do not particularly like them. Let's face it, most people don't like change. You would like to get used to some situation, especially at work, and when you get used to it and you're very good at it, so you get to the point where you don't even think about it. You don't even think about what you're doing because you're just doing it mechanically. For some people, it's routine and they hate it. For some other people, it's relaxing, it's comfortable. But let's face it, this is not going to happen. This is not the way to work in the 21st century. You cannot get used to anything because things are changing and they're changing fast. So you need to be able to tolerate these changes. You need to be able to accept them even though you don't like them. So that is the meaning of tolerate. And our final word for today's episode is temporary. Temporary. Let's see how we use that in context. We said many people will be expected to perform temporary jobs, then move on to new and different tasks. What does that mean? Something that is temporary lasts for only a limited time. It is not permanent. It's not lasting forever. If you go back in time, people used to get one job and they do just one task and they would do it forever until they retire or, of course, until they die. But now it's different. People will start doing something and in time they will change. They will take different tasks. And maybe the first task they took when they started working for a company, whatever the company is, doesn't exist anymore, disappeared. Nobody does that anymore, or nobody does it this way. Maybe they're doing it now in a different way, in a completely different way. It doesn't mean that you wouldn't have experience. Of course, experience is very important, but the experience you get while handling different situations, being flexible to handle different situations is going to be more important than your experience doing only one task. But anyway, let's get back to temporary. We're talking about temporary jobs. It's not about you don't have a permanent job. You might have a permanent job, but maybe the task that you do is going to be temporary because we need it now. We're not going to need it 2 years from now or 5 years from now. So 5 years from now, we'll have a different job for you. You will have to be flexible enough to accept that this is going to be the case. You may never be an expert in one task, but you may become an expert in adapting to change. And that might be the most important skill needed in the job market in the years to come, as we can start to see it today, actually. That brings me to the end of our episode and the 10 words. I hope you learned something. I hope you found the words interesting, the topic I talked about interesting. Of course, remember that you can practice all of these because if you don't practice, you're going to forget the words. We don't want that, right? You would want to add these words to your permanent vocabulary bank, the permanent active vocabulary bank, the vocabulary bank you can use, not only understand. Understanding is one thing, using is another thing. Of course, I would want you to use these words, not only understand what they mean. And you can do that by taking the link you can find in the description of the episode. Go to the custom post on EnglishPlusPodcast.com, and in the post you will find the topic itself, the text. You will find the words and their meanings and everything you need. And of course, you will find interactive activities that you can use to practice the words that we just learned. And you will find a PDF downloadable worksheet that has crossword puzzles, word search, and some activities for your spelling, multiple choice questions, and a spelling challenge for the text itself. You don't have to do them all, of course, just do the ones that you like, and you don't have to do them all in one day. You can do something today, you can do another exercise tomorrow. It's good to practice more than once, and that's why I included more than one activity so that I can help you to practice over a couple of days. You may practice a little bit today, a little bit tomorrow, 2 days from now, a week from now. You can just come back and do one exercise like a word search or a crossword puzzle, and then you will remember all these words. So don't leave this episode before taking the link and going to my website, EnglishPlusPodcast.com, and make the most of this episode and English Plus Podcast. And with that being said, I will have to remind you again, I need your support. There's another link in the description that will take you to my Patreon page. You can support me there and you can help me keep English Plus alive. Now, with that being said, thank you very much for listening to another episode from English Plus Podcast. Our episode today was Word Power. Thank you very much. This is your host, Danny. I will see you next time.